presence at Murphy Hall? I haven't seen that.
Very little. I agree with you, Rachel. All we're seeing is about maybe 10 to 12 officers at the front door. There is no perimeter on the outskirts of this large group that is camped on the concrete. I shouldn't say camp, but standing on the concrete here. What you're seeing on the right side of your screen is, as you said, about half a mile away, in the center of campus, Kirchhoff Hall. These UCLA police officers maintain their skirmish line there on the south side of Kirchhoff. Even though it doesn't appear there are any more protesters there, they may be concerned, or they may have intel that there is still going to be some kind of an attempt to reoccupy that patio area after it's been cleared. Or it could just be that at Murphy Hall, the ranking sergeant or whoever is down there for UCLA PD is not terribly concerned that this group may get out of hand, or they feel that the very, very small little perimeter that they have put around the western side door, I guess it is, the western side door of Murphy Hall is enough for them to maintain this. So I agree with you. It is strange that after having such a large police presence outside of Kirchhoff, there is no attempt to move that presence to where the protest is now on the east side of campus.
Yeah, like you said, the only police presence we saw was right at the entrance. The campus security officers on their bicycles and a few of the police officers having an exchange with the protesters. So, yeah, we are curious as to see why the main police presence is where the protesters are not. But like you said, Mark, they may have information that we are not privy to, and they may be anticipating some kind of action or something happening back over where Kirchhoff is. So again, a live look from SKYCal over on the UCLA campus. This is Murphy Hall. Mark has been pointing out exactly the locations where these protesters have been gathering all morning and afternoon. This group once at Kirchhoff Hall, about a half mile from where they are right now, moving to this location after a little bit of a scuffle between the protesters and officers earlier. But since they moved to Murphy Hall, we haven't seen any violent confrontation or even any pushing and shoving like we saw earlier. Everything seems to be very peaceful here. We saw leaders, organizers speak on their megaphones, really getting the crowd riled up. So far, things have been peaceful, at least at Murphy Hall.
Yeah, that's right, Rachel. And as I watch this current group here outside of Murphy Hall, it strikes me that as we've covered protests, you can really tell the focus of the protest and the demeanor of the protesters. At Kirchhoff, a lot of the protesters had their eyes on the police or the patio, and that was sort of a very tense situation. But this particular group, their eyes are actually on the speaker that's in this group, which is actually a much less tense situation for law enforcement, because these protesters here, whether they're students or from outside people, are not focusing on the police or focusing on the building. They're focusing on the speaker, which means that it's sort of an inwardly looking protest rather than an outwardly looking protest. It's much more tense and perhaps dangerous when the focus of the group is on the actual skirmish line itself. And that appears to not be the case here. As a student myself, I can remember going and walking past protests, and many times there's just student leaders who are giving speeches or having lectures or discussing ideas. And these usually involve capturing the attention of the protesters, and they listen quietly, or they agree and they chant, or something like that. It's much more tense and much more hostile when you have a confrontational situation between law enforcement officers and a line of protesters. And it doesn't look like we're seeing that here at Murphy Hall.
Yeah, and let's take a live look right now. Well, what you're seeing is a picture of the LAPD units that have arrived on campus. Mark, you had mentioned that LAPD was well aware of the situation and is offering support to UCLA police in case they need it. And we just saw that line of patrol vehicles ready to help if necessary. Earlier on the ground, we saw the line of UCLA police, the skirmish line formed, the officers in their riot gear. But so far, no need for them to use their batons or anything like that. It's been pretty peaceful, minus the pushing and shoving, brief pushing and shoving we saw over at Kirchhoff Hall. So Yeah.
That's what we're looking at right here. You can already see that this actually gives us a new piece of intel that SKYCal has returned to Kirkhoff. The reason that this long line of UCLA police are there is probably to protect the operation we're seeing here. This is campus facilities cleaning up those barricades. This is definitely something that they did not want to have interfered with any protesters. So they are protecting their facilities operators both on the roof and on the ground to clear up and reposition all of those heavy metal chairs.
Right.
So, Rachel, I can tell you, I sat and ate lunch on those very chairs. They are heavy. They were never designed to be moved very far.
I see.
They're the kind of thing that would withstand up in a windstorm or in rain, and it's not something that you could carry out with you if you were trying to take it.
Yeah.
These are very heavy metal pieces of furniture, and now Facilities is putting them back in place so that students can eat there again, and that makes sense why there's still a perimeter down there to make sure this operation goes smoothly.
Yeah, great insight, Mark. And, you know, like you said, SKYCal always giving us a great perspective of what's going on out there on the scene. We saw the officers out on the roofs also making sure things on the ground look peaceful. They've got it surrounded to make sure there is no interference, like Mark said. Again, on the right side of the screen there, we are looking at video from maybe about 40 minutes ago on the ground of some pushing and shoving, a little bit of a skirmish going on between the officers and protesters. This was in the Kirkhoff Hall patio area where the protesters were asked to disperse. They did not like it, and there was a little bit of back and forth right there, as you see, between the officers and the protesters. But that group has since moved about half a mile from that location to Murphy Hall, where you saw the pictures of the protesters gathered on the steps there, chanting together and more organized. And Mark made a really good point. I think a good a contrast between the two situations was where at Kirkhoff Hall we saw a more maybe volatile, tense feeling, more of a confrontational feel where the protesters were directly looking at the officers, and definitely a more tense feeling to that. But over at the Murphy Hall area, not so much that, more inwardly looking amongst themselves and spreading their message, chanting together. So two different, very different pictures here. Again, on the right side of your screen, probably about 40 minutes ago on the UCLA campus. On the left, a live picture from SKYCal, an overview of the campus. And Mark, we saw the police presence that has arrived over the last, I'd say, even 30 minutes. It has certainly increased.
Yeah, that's right. UCLA PD, they have a sizable police force. They certainly have all of their officers on duty. They may have actually brought officers from the night shift on early in order to handle this. What you're seeing on the right side of your screen, as you mentioned earlier, you can see a very dense and tight line of UCLA PD officers there on the right side of your screen, and then further to the right is more protesters. And if you can, as SKYCal zoomed in, you can see there actually was dialogue here between protesters and police. And again, we did not see any arrests. And in terms of violence, the most we saw was some scuffling, really no injuries at all. Have not seen one ambulance, no calls for ambulance, not even any calls for first aid on the radio. Anybody with a hurt hand or a foot, like we saw earlier weeks ago at Royce Quad, we saw a lot of those kinds of minor injuries during the dispersing of that encampment, but nothing here so far. And as a matter of fact, with SKYCal, just before those barricades were breached by UCLA PD, we actually saw what looked like a UCLA PD commander speak one-to-one with someone from inside that protest group. That person actually came out and spoke one-to-one with officers, and that may have actually made this peaceful transition. But here's one of the moments where there was some scuffling. We could see there that there was just some pushing and shoving between people. But on the left side of your screen, I want to note, Rachel, it looks like the group may be on the move again. They are now heading northbound. This is another hall. I believe this is Dodd Hall that they are now moving into. This is an academic building on campus. This is just to the north of Murphy Hall. I want to say this is a language building. I'm going to have to refresh my memory of what's in Dodd Hall. But this is definitely a hall that would have academic classes, probably even in session today, right now. So moving in, not sure if these protesters intend to disrupt class right now.
Okay, on the right side of your screen, you are looking at pictures of the protesters entering Dodd Hall. That is Dodd Hall. We've got that confirmed. And it doesn't seem to me at this point there's any police presence blocking them from entering. So they are encouraging each other to enter right now. I'm curious whether there is already a police presence there and they're just allowing them to enter at least on top of the steps there, or are they not anywhere near the scene at this point?
Well, yeah, it does not look like there are anything involving law enforcement outside of Dodd, and Dodd is a publicly accessible hall on the UCLA campus. This would be where students, those doors would be unlocked at this time of day on a Thursday, because classes would be possibly in session here if there are classes. This is home to philosophy, classics, and art history. These are the kinds of classes that take place at Dodd Hall. So we are seeing live pictures on your right of students going in, or I should say protesters going into this hall. This is a hall that did get occupied about 3 or 4 weeks ago when we had that large encampment in Royce Quad. This is one of the halls that those protesters went into. They did do chanting in there. They did try to stop some classroom activity, I believe, and we did have a live picture in there that showed protesters in the hallways, and it appears, Rachel, this afternoon that they have gone to Dodd Hall once again.
Yes, they have, Mark. All right, right now we have our Jasmine Veal, who just arrived on campus. And Jazz, can you tell us exactly where you are and what you see happening around you?
Well, it's a little chaotic and confusing, Rachel. We just got here maybe about 10 minutes ago in front of Murphy Hall. You still see there is a smaller crowd chanting. They were using a megaphone to rally people up, still holding some signs. But now what we have happening here on Charles E. Young Drive, if you go from Murphy Hall, which they have blocked off with police officers, or have created a roadblock here so no one can drive through. But down that way, the group has now started to march to a different location. And obviously, we know that this started at Kirchhoff Hall, where there was a police line keeping those protesters from re-entering. But again, they moved over there to Murphy Hall. So we'll kind of see, they're chanting and beginning to walk this direction. So I'm not seeing a heavy police presence, as that line of officers from that other location on campus have not made their way over here, maybe letting these protesters do their thing. You know, we know that this just comes, as you both have been talking about, weeks after they dismantled that other pro-Palestinian encampment back on May 2nd and arrested more than 200 people very close to here in the Royce Quad area. So this group has since returned. They called for this on social media today, and they've gathered here as those internal and even external investigations over UCLA's response to that first encampment a few weeks ago are underway. And again, that encampment lasted from April 25th up until it was dismantled by officers and law enforcement May 2nd. So I'm not sure if any arrests have been made here. We know that they had a little bit of a scuffle with officers previously at Kirchhoff Hall, where they initially had started a sit-in, or they were gathered there, and again now marching down Charles E. Young Drive. I just spoke to some students, not part of this protest. They were trying to get to class. They said for some students here at UCLA, they're trying to work their way around, make it to midterms. There are some midterms here. Next month is really the big month as the quarter ends. But they are hoping that classes don't go back online. You know, they need to be here, they say, to be in person, and they hope that they can, you know, make it back to campus tomorrow as normal from these other students I just spoke with, again, trying to make their way to class. So, yeah, it definitely looks like the larger part of the crowd now has moved from Murphy Hall with some of their signs. It does seem a little unorganized. I don't know if they really have a plan. No one's talking much to the media. They want to, they say, stay focused on their message and their leader. So I guess they have now gathered on the steps of this building right in front of me, and my photographer Francisco is kind of just showing you the scope of where they've spread out here on the street. But Rachel, I also want to get to that statement here, you know, that came just a short time ago from the Administrative Vice Chancellor's office, and also the Chancellor for Campus Safety, saying that They have withdrawn the consent to remain on campus for these demonstrators at Kirchhoff. So, they've kind of pushed them off the Kirchhoff patio, asking them to disperse as they moved over here to Murphy Hall. But the statement goes on to say there is reasonable cause to find that the demonstrators' activities, including erecting those barricades earlier, establishing fortifications, blocking access to parts of the campus and buildings, they're disrupting the campus operations. So they've asked those demonstrators to disperse. They've just kind of moved on. They have been informed, though, that if they do not disperse, if they, again, form any kind of blockade, if they disrupt any kind of campus activities, that they will face arrest. That is a warning from the chancellor, the vice chancellor's office, and the security personnel here. And they say, yeah, you will have that possible disciplinary action. We can order you to stay away from campus for 7 days, whether you're students, faculty, staff, that you will face those consequences through the office here of the administrative vice chancellor. So again, just kind of standing by. We know that UCLA Chancellor Gene Block, he was grilled this morning by members of the Republican-led House committee there in Washington, D.C. about his handling of that pro-Palestinian encampment a few weeks ago, saying that he had a very delayed response, that the UCLA did not do enough to protect the students, to protect those in that pro-Palestinian encampment when they say a violent mob attacked them on one of the nights as that encampment had been set up here on campus, not very far away in Royce Quad. Actually, I can see it from where I'm standing. So I'm again going to try to talk to some of these protesters and get a sense of what their plans are, if they have another rally or a march scheduled is what we're hearing maybe later this evening, or if this will kind of flow into that next protest that they were talking about on social media. So yeah, a little bit of some student. So we do have some officers over there, Francisco, walking up the lawn. So some of those officers now making their way over to where this group is gathered in Dodd Hall. So just down from Murphy Hall now they've gathered on the steps at Dodd Hall.
That's exactly what I was wondering, Jazz. You said you were coming down Charles A. Young Drive, and we had seen right before we came to you a number of protesters going up the stairs into Dodd Hall. So you just walked right up on it, and we were wondering whether there was any police presence, and you just showed us they've now arrived.
Well, and they are making their way inside. So that's Francisco is going to kind of stay back as I check things out. No, they've opened the door, so they're waving people in. They're saying, "Come on into Dodd Hall," and that's not what these officers in the campus security wants them to do, obviously, and block any kind of entrance and make their way inside.
Jazz, I know it's hard to see from your
perspective. So they're closing some of the doors. Yeah.
Jazz, I know it's hard to see from your perspective.
Go ahead.
Looking into the lobby, do you see any police presence amongst the crowd that's gathered inside?
No, I just see some of the officers standing out here in their riot gear, their helmets.
You've got about 50 sheriff's deputies down there further to the east.
Pete Demetrio with KNX standing next to me along with a ton of other media. But yeah, we have about 50 other officers. He's telling me that sheriff's deputies that he saw to the east of here, and along with the line of officers that are still there at Kirchhoff.
Right.
So they're kind of, I guess, in various areas now of the campus. But yeah, they've made their way inside Dodd Hall.
Yeah.
They are.
Maybe Mark. Okay, so now they're holding a rally on the step. Maybe Mark Liu can tell us what's inside here that essentially are they going to camp out here for a while then?
Yeah, Jasmine, I am familiar with Dodd Hall. It's art and literature and I want to say
philosophy. I think
philosophy, classics, and art history is there. And I actually want to give everybody a look. If you can come out, I don't know if the director can bring out to my map. Okay, so I want to give you an update on where this is all happening. So this is the UCLA campus. We're going to start here, down here in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. That's Kirchhoff, where the patio was right there, where they were barricaded. Then these protesters moved up along here and ended up here at Murphy Hall, and now have moved just to the north, and Dodd Hall is here. But I want to bring everybody's attention to this part, right in the center of your map. This area is where Royce Quad was, were on May 2nd, that large encampment. We are very close to that. It's simply a stone's throw away from where the protest is now. I'm going to zoom in and show you. This is what we're looking at here, this white building in the center screen. That's Dodd Hall. And as I turn around and move the map over, right there, what we're looking at here in the center, that's where the Royce Quad was. So these students very close to where that giant encampment was just about 3 weeks ago, as they continue to sort of work around Dodd Hall. And in the area that we're looking at here, it's basically, that's where all the protesters are. That's what the camera image that you're seeing on the left-hand side of your screen is right there. It's right on the eastern side of campus. That's where Jasmine is. That's where that line of police, LAPD units is as well. And it seems to be the central focus of the protesters' attention right now.
You know, that we just answered our question, Mark. We were wondering earlier why we didn't see more police presence over at Murphy Hall. Perhaps they knew that this group would be moving, and you see the line of police cars parked right outside this hall. So they may have had information that this group would be moving here, and you saw in Jasmine's live shot that the police officers were responding. What we've seen is the huge group of protesters making their way up the steps to Dodd Hall. We're seeing the live picture right now. Jasmine and Francisco are showing us. There's Jasmine right there. She's right outside the doors of Dodd Hall. So let's see if Jazz could hear us.
They've blocked the doors. Say that again?
Jazz, are you outside the doors of Dodd Hall?
Yeah, so we've made our way here to the front of Dodd Hall. You can see that these protesters are locking the door. They're not letting anyone else in, so they've essentially locked themselves inside. They were motioning for other students, other fellow protesters to get in, and now they're just holding the door. So I'm not sure what's going to be happening here as the chanting continues on the outside. Yeah, so classes are taking place in here. They're not letting anyone else in. We do see some LAPD officers out on Charles E. Young Drive. Maybe these are some faculty. Do you guys know what's going on essentially, or?
Not really. They just filed. I'm not a student.
Okay, yeah, they just filed in, right? Yeah. So trying to get a sense here, talking to some of these protesters, a lot of them have shaken their head and refusing to talk to the media. So not all of them, but you know, a pretty large number. Look at these guys right next to the door, Rachel.
Yeah.
I mean,
Jazz, you were
one side
saying,
open.
Yeah.
But
sorry, Jazz, you were saying that they were motioning for the other protesters to come in, but when you walked up, obviously they don't want the media coming in, but they are allowing the protesters to enter.
Yeah, it was a very, well, I guess some sort of a last minute, who knows what kind of plan they had in place, but they are, I guess, in a sense, manning the doors. I mean, they're only letting those in that are carrying the sign, that have been, you know, with them since earlier today, and with the flags here, and a lot of them with the masks over their face. So yeah, so I guess let me ask this: what is the plan? Are you disrupting class for how long? Okay, he's saying he's not talking either. So we've had some students trying to I saw a few students as classes are underway making their way out. Let's see if as they chant. Are you guys okay? Are you guys letting students come out? You guys are letting students come in and out, or what's the plan?
Students can come in and out.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the plan? Are you guys planning to camp out in here?
Interviewed right now. You can ask off the record.
Okay, yeah, again, this has been the issue for even prior to this. Weeks ago, we saw that a lot of them just did not want to talk about the cause, why they're here, or share any of their plans. So trying to figure that out, Rachel. But, you know, and I see officers across the street in that lawn area, and they have not moved toward Dodd Hall. So they are still in their in their helmets and more of their riot gear, staying away so far from this area.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective, Jazz. Yeah, that's a great question. You know, trying to ask that gentleman, what exactly are your plans? He didn't answer, obviously, but the question remains, do they plan to disrupt classes? But we saw in the picture a few seconds after Jazz asked that question, what appeared to be students coming out. So it does look like they're letting students out the door.
Yeah, that was actually something that I was very concerned about here, Rachel, and that is that UCLA PD and campus security are very vigilant as to whether or not access is completely blocked to an academic building. This will change their stance and their attitude towards the protest. They're very likely to let protesters in and out of buildings that are already publicly accessible by students. But if there's a situation like they had with Moore Hall earlier this month, where they had students trying to enter a normally publicly accessible building and then closing the doors and locking them, that presents a whole host of problems, both from just a civil liability situation where if someone wants to leave and they can't, it becomes a very serious problem, both from a medical perspective, a fire safety perspective, and just an access perspective. So it's good to see that at least these protesters are allowing people who want to leave the building to leave the building, because if there's ever a situation where no one can get in and out, I would be willing to bet that the UCLA Police Department would take a very different look at that than as a regular First Amendment expression of rights here, of freedom of speech, as they have been so far.
Valid points, great points, Mark. And perhaps that is a reason, because the protesters are allowing the students and people to go in and out freely, perhaps that is the reason police have stayed back and not have forced their way into the building. And at this point, they're facilitating this protest for these protesters to be gathered in the lobby. Again, we don't know exactly what's going on inside, whether classes are being disrupted. But at this point, the police have stayed back, as we can tell, where Jasmine and Francisco are along Charles E. Young Drive or Boulevard. So again, when Jasmine tried to go in, they locked the door on her. They wouldn't let the media in, but they are certainly allowing fellow protesters and students come in and out of the building. And when Jasmine tried to ask questions, they wouldn't answer her. So she is trying her best to exactly find out what the mission is, what their goal is here. But again, you are looking at live pictures of a group of protesters at the steps and inside of Dodd Hall on the UCLA campus. The picture on the left is obviously from the ground, looking at the line of police cars, LAPD police cars that have arrived to support UCLA police in case they are needed. So again, two pictures you're looking at. One on the left is live, and so is the one on the right. We have great perspectives of what's going on right there in front of Dodd Hall. Great information from our Jasmine Veal out there on the ground, and great pictures from our photographer, Francisco Alvarez. They are giving us a look at exactly, the people out there sitting on the lawn outside of Dodd Hall, just kind of looking on, seeing what's going on. That is where we're also seeing the officers kind of lining up and waiting to see what is going on or what will be happening inside Dodd. But right now, we don't have information as to whether the police are inside the building right now. Let's go to our Jasmine Veal again. She has a student with her. Jazz.
Yeah, hi, Rachel. So this is Sean. He says he's a sophomore here at UCLA. He woke up a little late, so he wasn't here for the beginning of this protest. But now we're in front of Dodd Hall. A large group of these demonstrators have now marched into Dodd Hall. So you're saying you know a little bit about what the plan is and their goals.
Yeah, the plan is we're going to walk through the lecture, they're going to protest, and then they're going to come out from the back. And after they come out from the back, they're going to end it. Supposedly, they're not going to do anything too crazy, hopefully not, but yeah, we're trying to make everything as peaceful as we can.
But marching through a lecture, like disrupting class.
I mean, we're spreading the message. So we're spreading the message. UCLA, you see the staff here, they're with us, they're supporting us, and that's what we like to see.
So the message, and you think this is going to get the attention of the administrators here at UCLA,
oh, yeah,
even though they...
Yeah, I mean, if we're disrupting class, they're not going to want that.
They've said that you will face disciplinary action if you disrupt, if you set up any kind of barricade.
Then it shows they don't care about their students and what they believe.
So you're a sophomore, you're going into some midterms, and I know the quarter is next month.
Yes.
How do you, this kind of, this demonstration though, and the message it sends, how is it disrupting other students though, who feel differently?
I mean, they have their own beliefs. We have our own beliefs. The students who want to, keep out of it, they can keep out of it. But the students who want to show and represent their voice, they're allowed to represent their voice. We're in the United States where everyone has a freedom of speech. So.
Okay, so were you at the pro-Palestinian encampment a few weeks ago in Royce Quad?
No, I wasn't. I was back home visiting family.
Okay, so this is your first demonstration.
This is my first
here.
First time here on campus for a protest.
Okay, and so you're planning to make your way inside?
Yep, I'm going to go inside, walk through, and
it doesn't worry you that they are saying that you could be arrested, you could be told to stay away from campus for 7 days?
I mean, whatever to keep my voice out in the world, I'll get arrested for,
Okay. So you're determined to follow through with this, and he's with his cell phone as well. So a lot of the students streaming this and on social media, as they had heard about it, you'd heard about it on social, right?
Yeah, well, my friend Aiden Ross, he told me about this, and so I wanted to support him.
Okay.
So,
and again, we've been trying to talk to some of the leaders, I guess some of the main organizers.
They're all busy, so it's hard, but thank you.
Stay safe, Sean. I guess that's one perspective from Sean, who says he is a sophomore here at UCLA, and he came here and he just marched his way through Dodd Hall, as some of these other folks have been doing, disrupting, they say, some of the lectures, and then they'll go out back and, I guess, continue their march. They were just down at the administrative building. They've been at Kirchhoff, where they did meet some resistance there with police officers who I have not seen enter at all, but I see some flags being brought up in front of the camera, so they don't want, for some reason, the media peeking in through this doorway, even though some of the other doors are wide open. So, so they have their message, and they some are a little more aggressive than others in terms of who they want seeing whatever action they're about to take here inside of Dodd Hall. And right now, as I just look in through this middle door, a lot of them are just gathered in the hallway. So I don't see any doors. I don't know if the lecture halls have actually been breached, or if they've gone into any of the classes, to disrupt any kind of the students. But Rachel, so that's kind of I see a lecture hall and the doors are shut. So a lot of them are just still gathered, like I said, in the hallway here.
Yeah, Jazz, great interview with the student, Sean. And can you clarify what he said? He said the plan was for the group to march through during lecture and then walk out the back way. I wasn't sure if he said they meant to disrupt class.
Well, I guess he said that might send a message. So my understanding was if they disrupt students in classes, that's what they're going to do before, as they continue on with their march. But a lot of them, I'm not even sure if they won't let me in, so I can't see if they've even moved from this kind of location. A lot of them are just now sitting on their cell phones, on laptops, and standing guard here at the door. And you see still you have a large number of people outside on Charles E. Young Drive. So, are you? Oh, well, I was going to try to talk to one. It looks like some of the students are making their way out. So really it is unclear, Rachel, exactly what they actually will accomplish by going into Dodd Hall here.
Yeah, we appreciate that perspective.
And he didn't say, he said he wasn't afraid of any disciplinary action, right? And he didn't seem too worried about that if, in fact, he is a student here. He said he's going to do it to get his message out.
Yes, exactly. Great interview there. A lot of perspective. And again, we are looking at a live picture. Photographer Francisco is zooming into the lobby or the front area of Dodd Hall. These protesters are not allowing Jasmine or our photographer Francisco access inside. They're physically blocking their view. As you can see, they're trying to hold up signs to block his view, but we did get a shot of the protesters inside. Sean, the student Jasmine interviewed, said that their plan was to gather, to march through Dodd Hall and to make their voices heard, knowing that there are classes going on, and then proceed out the back way. But right now, as Francisco is providing live pictures out there on the steps, a lot of people, a lot of students, protesters waiting outside, sitting down. We see the police presence out there. That is Charles E. Young Drive. We did see the number of police officers respond to this area, but at this point, no officers. Jasmine did not see any officers inside Dodd Hall, but Francisco is showing us pictures, live pictures of the police right there gathered, ready to respond in their riot gear. So we continue to see the police presence grow as time goes on. And this is, I think, the biggest gathering we've seen from all morning long. This is certainly one of the biggest we've seen. And the police anticipating any kind of issues. Again, Mark and I have been talking about all morning long. There wasn't anything extremely violent, no huge clashes or confrontations. A little pushing and shoving we saw at Kirchhoff earlier this morning. Mark, what's your perspective on what we're seeing right now?
Well, it's very interesting, Rachel. I agree with you. We have not seen a lot of violence, and I wanted to research something that one student that Jasmine Veal had just been talking to had said. He said that he thought that the intentions of the protesters was to pass through Dodd Hall and disrupt the lecture that was there and then move on to the north side of the building. As I recall from my days of being a student at UCLA, there is a very large lecture hall in Dodd Hall. It's Dodd 147. It seats a capacity of 366 students, so certainly plenty of students, a large UCLA lecture hall. And I checked the schedule for Dodd 147 today. There is an Economics 103 class that just started at 2 o'clock. So 17 minutes ago, as many as it says enrolled 340 students in this class, Econ 103, starting at 2 p.m. at Dodd 147. That may be the lecture hall that they are attempting to disrupt. It certainly is one of the largest ones in that building. So, 15 minutes into this class already, I'm sure the professor at Econ 103 is now dealing with protesters inside of that lecture if they are still there, affecting as many as 340 students. We don't have any idea how long they intend to disrupt that class and then move on. There are a number of other smaller classrooms that seat about 20. These are for smaller breakout lectures, possibly from a teacher's assistant or what have you. We have no idea if any of those protesters are going to in any of those rooms, but there is certainly a very large lecture in session in Dodd Hall today.
Yeah, that's good information. Good perspective, knowing that there's like over 350 students gathered in one place, and perhaps there is a message here to that class, the students there. Or earlier, Jasmine talked to the student Sean, and he had mentioned that they were happy to have the support of UC staff as well with them. So we do know now that there's UCLA faculty protesting with the students there. So certainly a lot going on. We continue to look at live pictures on the ground. You see this is a picture of some students right there outside of Dodd Hall. When Jasmine Veal tried to get inside Dodd Hall, they physically blocked her and her photographer Francisco from getting access inside. So there's certainly a message they are spreading here. As far as we know, police have not entered Dodd Hall. We continue to see them gathered outside along Charles A. Young Drive. And our Jasmine Veal has some new interviews for us. Jazz.
Yep. Yeah, I just ran into some faculty members here at UCLA. Can you tell me what you teach?
Math.
Math.
Same. We're in the same department.
Okay. And you're out here, part of this demonstration. Why?
Well, I think we both really support the students that have been protesting and the students that are involved in the strike upcoming. And yeah, we wanted to show our support.
So we're essentially postdocs. Like, we're technically faculty, mostly because they assigned us that title because they don't like having, striking. And if we're part of faculty, we're not part of the union. But we wanted to support the picket line as well because we have the same interests as many of the postdocs who are part of UAW 4811 in terms of feeling the administration's actions with respect to the clearing of the encampment and the failure to protect the students who are protesting in favor of Palestinian rights, the way they were treated. And yeah, since we have the same interests and many people we know and many people who have the same sort of positions within the university as us also are part of the union and are part of everything that's going on.
Faculty union that's planning the strike, I think, on the 28th. Is that what
we're talking? So even though we're technically faculty, realistically within the department that we're in, we're more like postdocs who are part of UAW 4811, who is conducting this.
Join UAW are for the last year, and the university's been blocking us from being able to join the union.
But there is a strike plan in this demonstration, among many others. You say you agree with the cause, whether you can strike or whatever you affiliate with faculty.
So we can support by joining the picket line or just showing up at demonstrations, even though we're not part of the union.
How do you feel, and as faculty, as those who have gone through? You both went to UCLA here, studied here, or just with your postdoc?
Just with the postdoc.
Okay, but as part of this university now, how do you feel about them going into Dodd Hall, disrupting the lectures of students who do want to be here, who are not part of the protest or demonstration, and who are trying to learn?
Well, I think that it's trade-offs, right? Like, I can understand the perspective of people who would say that's overly disruptive, but at the same time, there's a rich tradition in America and across the globe of university protests, and protest is inherently about disruption to some degree. And you can argue over, like, what amount is justified based on, like, proportionality to, like, the cause that you're protesting. But I don't feel that disruption or sitting in the building is, like, you know, an abomination beyond the pale or anything.
And officers have not made their way in. They're letting it appears to, you know, allow demonstrators to do that.
Right now it's at peace, yeah, for the moment.
At this point, it seems like there's multiple groups calling for disruption now, both the students from the encampment as well as now the union. And so if that's
kind of banded together,
to have the university listen to us and not continue with their policy, which we disagree with.
Chancellor Gene Block was grilled in Washington, D.C. today. There was the House committee asking him about the encampment from a few weeks ago and how it was handled.
Yeah, I don't know what he said exactly, but my thought was that he was going to blame the university response on anti-Semitism. And personally, as a Jewish person, I haven't experienced anti-Semitism on campus, and I'm very offended by using anti-Semitism as an excuse to use police violence against protesters.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're Jewish. You're here, pro-Palestinian, and taking that stance
I'm
in
also
support
very
of.
offended and saddened by the actions of the Israeli government and military in Gaza.
Yeah, and so there's a lot happening today, I guess, on this front. Were you also? Did you see the encampment? Were you a part of it at any point?
I only saw it. I never joined it.
On Royce Quad from a few weeks ago. But how it was handled, I guess that's how the delayed police response, how the chancellor is being blamed, I guess, essentially for how he didn't respond immediately after the violent mob had attacked some of the pro-Palestinian demonstrators.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think the chancellor is one person, right? He has power and he's sort of a figurehead. So it kind of makes sense that someone has to speak up and be responsible. But I think it reflects probably a deeper failure of the administration and like its structures. And, you know, more people are to blame than just one man, even if he's sort of the spokesperson.
I guess he had said, and I'm looking at some of the statements he made today during the Washington, D.C., during that House committee, saying that, you know, his opening remarks, he said that his response to the encampment set up, you know, last month at the end of April, that it really tested the limits of UC's approach, he said, to the de-escalation strategies with campus protests. He tried to avoid using law enforcement to remove those protesters unless it was absolutely necessary to protect the safety. So, you know, he's saying, you know, he did all he could. It tested the limits.
I mean, they called them in immediately today. I don't know. That seems like complete hypocrisy if they're at the same time calling the police on protesters right here on campus.
Police showed up
I didn't
quickly.
see any violence. I don't know. I was there for a lot of the time, not all the time, but it did not seem to be any violence or danger.
The police responded and gave it that sense of...
the police were there from the beginning, as far as I can tell.
Today.
Yeah.
And I think the really galling thing, not talking about today, but about the events that he is being grilled about, was that it is true that they seem to fail to de-escalate and fail to stop the counter-protesters from attacking with, you know, sticks, fists, kicks, etc. the protesters on the night of April 30th, but then immediately the following day, immediately used overwhelming force of the police to clear them out. That seems like a sudden switch, entirely biased in favor of the counter-protesters, or those who dislike the pro-Palestinian protesters, which doesn't seem in line with the sort of, oh, we didn't know what we were doing, innocent me sort of line he's taking in the interview in Congress.
We'll see what comes of this today. You guys are planning to be here however long?
For a while. I'm not totally sure.
Do you have classes too, math class?
We do, and we're kind of in the middle since we're not officially part of the union, and it's hard to decide how we can handle it, and we're not.
Handle it. When you say strike, is there something else planned tonight that's going on, or?
Not that I'm aware.
Yeah, the information I have is that the strike will begin on Tuesday next week.
That's what I was talking. Okay, that the strike is coming, that this demonstration is just leading up to that.
That's my understanding as well.
All right. Thank you guys both for the insight and for talking, because we have met some resistance in terms of those who, I guess, have organized this, refusing to talk to the media.
Sometimes there's leading questions, you know, you never know. Like, sometimes it's edited misleadingly, but...
Well, we try to present both sides, so I appreciate it, you guys letting us know why you're out here. So thank you again. You know, and I just got, and as I toss it back to you, Rachel, for the moment, I did just... get a text message from a friend who, outside of this, she's trying to make her way down here to see the UCLA softball playoff game versus Georgia today at Easton Stadium. So, I mean, on top of this, there are, like you said, classes going on, activities, sporting events that a lot of people want to know if they can even make it to today.
Yeah, Jasmine, we appreciate the interviews and the perspectives you are bringing us. And behind Jasmine, we can look at live pictures of LAPD units lined up there on Charles E. Young Drive. Assignment Manager Mike Rogers has now joined us. And Mike, we've learned that LAPD has issued a citywide tactical alert.
Yeah, that's right, Rachel. That often happens when they need to deploy an excessive amount of officers into a certain region. And what that does is just makes everybody stay put. Nobody's allowed to go home. Everybody stays on shift. They can do this in different fashions with a modified tactical alert just for the Bureau, or they can do it as a citywide tactical alert, which is what they have done here, and probably is because UCLA is not necessarily their jurisdiction. They're a partner agency, an assisting agency in this. So you're probably getting officers from West LA, Pacific Division, even some in the Valley probably that are coming over the hill to go down there as well. So just because of that, they're pulling resources from different bureaus across the city, different divisions across the city. And because of that, as we're looking now at live pictures of SKYCal and Desmond Shaw overhead now, we are, you see even right there, that 10 on the back of that cop car, that's from LAPD's West Valley. That 9 is from Van Nuys Division. So that 1 is from downtown LA. So they're really pulling from all over the city, and because you're drawing resources from all over the city, that's why the tactical alert goes into effect. That way other portions of the city are not left kind of hanging while you have these officers over here at UCLA.
Okay. Good point. And we understand that our Desmond Shaw is now overhead in SKYCal. Des, what can you see from your vantage point?
Large cadre of officers that we just witnessed here marching across this courtyard right here, and in formation for whatever the next steps are going to be, if arrests are going to happen or if they're going to go in and try to retake this hall away from the protesters. It's just this number of officers that I can see right now. I'm sure there's some others in the area. Quite a few squad cars as we widen out here. Here you see these ones, and I have to imagine that more are on the way as well. You have a lot of onlookers here that have come to see all of the commotion. Looks like a lot of students are out here. So as we come back around, it looks like they're parked kind of right in front of the building in question here, in front of Dodd Hall. As we look at the western entrance to the building, which you have a lot of people that are out here along the sidewalk and inside of the building as well. So I'm just going to widen out and give you a lay of the land right now, and we'll see what LAPD's next steps are going to be. But this is probably, if it's anything like past incidents, it's probably going to be a pretty long, drawn-out process before they make any movement as far as going inside of that building.
Yeah, and Des, I just wanted to kind of talk about the UC campuses here are very open. There's no fencing. There's no way for them to really kind of control ingress and egress here. And so it's interesting because you see this contingent of officers here that have formed a group, and around them is just kind of people going about their business. And that's just kind of the task that LAPD is dealing with here. And Des, while you're there, if we can pan out, I want to look at the quad, Royce Quad. That's where the encampment was a couple of weeks ago. And then apparently they were also trying to set up another encampment there today, but LAPD kind of quickly put the kibosh on that one and didn't let them get very far on that. That's when they marched over to the hall that we are in right now. So yeah, there's the quad right there, totally empty, nothing like what we saw several weeks ago when LAPD had to come in here. But, Des, as we actually it looks like it's still boarded up right there on the side, right? But there may be some scaffolding and construction that was already going on. But Des, I wanted to talk to you too about just kind of the tactical situation that we find ourselves in here once these protesters have entered the building. It's kind of a different game when you've got them, in an outside open space. You can, corral them a little bit better. Once they get inside of a building, that makes things a little bit more tough.
Oh, absolutely. I assume they're going to be using some bullhorns, asking everyone to come out willfully. And if it's anything like past incidents, those orders could be ignored, and then it's going to be on to the next step. I mean, when we were covering that a couple of weeks ago, the authorities began to arrive before sundown, even if I recall, maybe around 6 o'clock, but they didn't actually move into the encampment to begin breaking it up until like 3 a.m. So, whenever we're in a tactical situation like this, obviously any agency, whether it's sheriff's deputies, LAPD, or CHP, they really take their time with these things. They want to give protesters every opportunity to come out and comply. And after hours of disobeying that order, that's when they start to formulate a plan to go inside. You see some of the officers here armed with less lethal. As I double in here, you see the green holsters right there. That's what that indicates. Out here with riot gear, with shields on, with helmets. It looks like with face guards. So you have one of the officers here. Looks like probably kind of debriefing them about what the next step is going to be, but this is probably going to take some time to resolve, I would surmise.
Yeah, and I saw UCPD is down there. We saw LAPD. I'm just curious, since we're not far, last time UCLA had a whole thing, Santa Monica PD was there, Beverly Hills, the West Hollywood Sheriff Station. Are you seeing any of those other law enforcement agencies down there, or is it pretty much just LAPD at this point?
Well, let's see here, because we've got more and more cars that are down here, and this I believe this is all LAPD. You see some motorcycle officers there as well. A lot of cruisers, various different types of vehicles. I think it's primarily LAPD that we're seeing at this point. So I mean, it seems like more and more officers are arriving, even just since we got here within the last couple of minutes. Yeah. You now see maybe 3 times. First we saw this group of officers come in, and then this one, and now we have a third little squadron here as well. So we're probably going to be waiting for even more officers to arrive to address this situation one way or another.
Yeah, and that's what we're working on figuring out now too, is kind of where are we at in this situation? Has a dispersal order been given? Are we still waiting on that? Are they still trying to kind of get their ducks in a row? Des, can we see that the building, the hall that they are in? I know our Jasmine Veal was right outside of there. She actually tried to go inside, and the group of protesters wouldn't even allow her. They physically blocked her from actually going inside of that hallway. So I just imagine that law enforcement, it's UCLA, it's a college campus. Hopefully there are cameras inside that at least, administration and law enforcement is kind of able to hopefully keep their eyes on them, at the bare minimum. But it's really going to be kind of a challenge here. I mean, UCLA has faced such intense scrutiny since the last time this happened, including the fact, as we reported yesterday, the reassignment of the UCLA police chief, a move that the UCPD union really scrutinized, saying you're shifting blame to law enforcement, and law enforcement was not the ones at fault for that last situation. And even since then, they've created a new office of campus safety that is headed up by a former Sacramento police chief. So lots of new things here since the last time we did this. And how is that going to play a role? There's the building right there. And it looks like, it's so interesting, Des, because you see people kind of freely walking, back and forth. There's signs in the front, and right across in that same street, that's where all the cop cars are parked, right? But we don't see any police officers right here near the front of the building.
Yeah, let's widen out and show you here. It looks like there's someone kind of manning the door right there, letting some people in. As you said, we tried to have one of our reporters go in, and they were denied. I know when it came to that encampment a couple of weeks ago, it was very organized, and there was actually like a wristband system that they were using, kind of like you might use if you were going to a concert or something like that, that would indicate, I guess, who they considered allies or people on their side that they would allow to freely go in and out of the encampment if you had one of those wristbands. So I'm wondering if they're doing something like that again. There was probably, quite a bit of coordination behind the scenes. We suspected very strongly that, after the breakup of the UCLA encampment, that was not going to be the end of these protests, that the protesters were most likely, regrouping and formulating another strategy. Here you see even more officers arriving.
Can you get on those cars, Des?
Repositioning their vehicles.
I can't tell if that's LAPD or not. I'm just curious if we've got some of these other agencies that are starting to kind of file in.
I think that's Santa Monica PD.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Santa Monica PD. So there you go. Yep, you can tell there by the logo on their vehicle. So now this is turning into a multi-pronged response. Yep. We know that when it came to the events of a couple of weeks ago, CHP was actually the lead agency on that whole operation. So we'll see if they get involved as well. Obviously, this is going to be one of those incidents that ties up a lot of resources for a very long time.
Yeah, and Des, you know, quickly, I'm going to ask the control room. I want to show our viewers some video from earlier because as we have seen in most of these protests, we get in this situation where law enforcement initially tries to make a move. Here's that video on the right side of your screen, and then there are clashes. And you see the protesters there clashing with law enforcement. That's even private security. I see Apex on the back of their shirts there. So that's not even all law enforcement. These are security guards that are down there. That's very interesting that they kind of mixed in with law enforcement there. We don't generally see that. That must be some security group that was hired by the university. But we see this all the time. They kind of get in here, they clash with the protesters, everybody takes a step back. The police try to regroup, get more resources in here, is what we're seeing now on the left side of your screen from Desmond Shaw's live pictures in SKYCal here. But yeah, that Apex security group has been hired, it appears, I would assume, by the university, and it looks like they were mixed in there with some of the law enforcement officers. They were gotten some clashes here that you can see. There's even another security group, CSC Security, on the blue shirt. So lots of private security here as well as law enforcement. So that clash happened. Everybody kind of separated, backed off. And now we've got this situation where you have an absolute ton of law enforcement as we look back live on the left side of your screen there at Desmond Shaw in SKYCal. And you see the police department really trying to mobilize, really trying to get themselves kind of together. Now, when I believe it was last week, Des, you weren't here, but we had UC Irvine. Okay, now we're seeing more units. This is from LAPD's Wilshire Station, LAPD's Hollywood Station right there with the 6 on the cars. So really pulling from all ends of the city here. But we had a situation where law enforcement came in and they were able to actually stop them from getting inside one of those buildings. So ultimately they were able to take the group and just kind of push them out. But now we're in a situation where they're inside of that building. And Des, just from looking on the outside, that looks also like it's a several-story tall building, right?
Yes, I mean, this is a pretty large building. It looks to be about 3 stories, you know, quite a few classrooms in there. I believe our Mark Liu was talking about the layout of that building. I've never been inside of that building personally, but you could see probably, you know, plenty of places where if they want to hold up. I mean, that's the other issue is, you know, how far are these protesters willing to go? We know that they're willing to go awfully far. So it could be one of those situations where LAPD, Santa Monica PD, whoever else is involved in this goes inside and they're going to have to, you know, probably get students or protesters out of every single room if they get in there and they lock the doors or they barricade themselves in. I would have to imagine that they're going to make it as difficult as possible for law enforcement, just based on, you know, everything we've seen, not just at UCLA, but at USC, some other campuses as well as across the country. So this is, you know, definitely going to be a very tough one for law enforcement if they want to try to break this situation down, and balancing, you know, freedom of speech, obviously, versus the disruption to the campus, and how UCLA is going to respond to this. I mean, it's just been such a mess for them, you know, they compared to how some of the other universities have handled this.
Yeah, and you know, Desmond, after the last incident at UCLA, we here at the desk, we did a lot of research on kind of their policies and procedures and why last time did it take so long for law enforcement to move in when things were not nearly as peaceful as they are now. Last time, everything was very clearly violent. And, you know, going through the UC handbook and the UC guidelines, there was a shift many years ago that shifted the power of what to do during protests from the police department to the administration of UCLA. So you're in a situation here where we've got UCPD there, obviously, but UCPD, by the way, statewide is only about 250 officers across the entire state at all the UC campuses. So obviously they're going to need outside help from LAPD, from Santa Monica PD, from everybody they can get involved in here. But then you become a very kind of, you know, a tactical issue here where you have to coordinate with all your outside partners. You're not just one person in control. I do want to go down live now. We have our Jasmine Veal, who has been outside of the hallway. Jasmine, it looks like LAPD kind of moving their cars away from right immediately in front of that building, right?
Yeah, they all of a sudden they marched in a line. They all got in their cruisers and now they are driving away as the group is chanting "Cops off campus." So, excuse me, not sure if they're regrouping or going to form a different kind of gathering elsewhere in terms of a roadblock or something. Sorry, my voice from all this trying to talk so loudly over the protesters.
No, you're okay.
But yeah, over the chanting out here in Dodd Hall. But, you know, some of the group has come back out of Dodd Hall. They've made their way back out, and like you said, some of them have also gone to the other side of the building after they, I guess, marched through some of the hallways there. I'm not sure if they made their way into any of the lecture halls, but that's the situation. This crowd is definitely growing now here on Charles E. Young Drive. So a very much larger group of these pro-Palestinian demonstrators are now here, including the faculty union. As I was just speaking to those two adjunct professors, they're not officially part of the union, but they were telling me as math adjunct professors that they are also planning a strike next week to get their message out. Sorry, there's another man talking right behind me, but yeah, they're saying basically they want Israel out of Palestine. They have signs doing that. They've been waving the flags, and so it is a mixture, Mark, of students and faculty out here today. And again, the officers, the LAPD, have moved out of this stretch of the street here.
Yeah, and Jasmine, I know those protesters actually blocked you from going inside of Dodd Hall there, but just from the outside, are you able to get a sense at all of how many people might be inside there?
Not anymore, and like I said, a ton have come out. So yeah. A lot of these demonstrators and protesters have now, look over here, Francisco, to the window. Someone's opened one of the windows in the lecture hall. I'm trying to see if that's a demonstrator that has opened one of those classroom or office windows. I can't, they have some sort of neon vest on, kind of hanging out of the window. But it seems like at least a good majority who had been hanging out in the hallway inside that I saw have now come back outside, climbing some of the trees. Standing around, I guess, waiting on their next direction from the organizers here.
Yeah, and
you see a sign that says UCLA faculty and staff standing with our students. So, I mean, yeah, it's a mix, like I said, faculty and students, and faculty wanting to be out here, as I've heard, to support their students.
Yeah, and Jazz, you talked about it a little bit, but last week, one of the unions that represents teachers' aides, or teachers' assistants, I should say, actually voted to authorize that strike. So it's a coordinated effort by that group. Now, the university system said they don't believe that's lawful because the strike would not have anything to do with labor conditions, but that didn't stop that group from, wanting to exercise what they believe is their right to do that strike. Jazz, I wanted to let you know we did reach out just now to LAPD's West LA station. We were trying to figure out if any kind of official dispersal order has been given, which would allow the officers to move in. And they tell us that UCPD is the one that has to give that dispersal order. They are just there in an assisting capacity. The university itself has to give that dispersal order, and I'm just curious if that has happened yet. As Jasmine, we can hear, is trying to gather some interviews there right now as we're kind of covering this live. And as Jasmine mentioned, the crowd is really growing, and that's what happened last week at UC Irvine as well. It was a much smaller group to begin with, and then the word kind of got out, and you see cell phones, you see people on social media, and now kind of gathering. Now LAPD has moved their cop cars, and now you see people standing in the street where the cop cars once were. So from Desmond Shaw's picture there on the left side of the screen, it does look like those law enforcement officers have kind of regrouped and maybe moved their vehicles kind of back more to a command post area. And again, we're waiting to see if UCLA is going to give that dispersal order. They're the ones that have to do it. They're the ones that are in control of this. And it looks like that woman right there, maybe a little bit angry about what's going on, screaming at the protesters there. Jazz, I want to bring you back in. Do you have somebody that is there?
Yeah, I have another faculty member, and Francisco just kind of showing you the crowd. This is LaToya Baldwin-Clark. What do you teach?
I'm at the law school. I'm a law professor.
Okay.
However, my expertise is not in this. I'm here mostly to support my students, primarily to support my students.
And you've been out here with them for how long now?
So I've been out here since about 8:30, 9 a.m. I was down at the encampment. One of the biggest issues to begin with is we were trying to get the students food. The cops were not letting the food in. Student affairs weren't letting the food in.
And then they eventually broke that up and they went to Murphy Hall and now Dodd Hall.
Yes, exactly.
I saw, I guess they had made their way into some of the hallways. You know if they made it in? One student demonstrator was saying he wanted to go into a lecture hall and make their voices heard.
I don't know. I don't know how far into the building they are. Again,
accomplishing what they aim to accomplish today?
Well, I think it depends on what it is that you believe that they're aiming to accomplish. What I think that they're doing is they want their voices to be heard. They want the administration to actually listen to them and do something and not just call the police on them.
I did see the police leave, and it looks like the LAPD, they have left at least this area.
Yeah, so it does look like the LAPD has left the area. I was just over by the law school, though. There's still a big bus from the LA Sheriff's Department, so I'm not sure what they're doing there. But yes, and you know what? That's the right thing to do, right? We're all just standing here chanting. There's no violence happening. There's no intimidation happening. This is what students do and what we should allow them to do. This is part of the university experience. And it's really shameful to me that the university isn't allowing them to do what students do. And it's really important for them to listen to them, and they just haven't been doing that.
Do you think, though, there is the line, though, with the university in a statement, the security office and the office of the assistant chancellor saying that if there is a blockade, if they try to prevent other students from entering classes or buildings, that there is going to be disciplinary action?
Yes, that's what I understand that they've said. What I've seen, though, is I haven't seen students not let other students into the building. There are classes going on. I saw on the other side of this building there were protesters outside, but there was no problem with students getting in or students getting out. It's just simply not true that the students are stopping anyone from doing anything. Mostly, look, they're stopping cars from being on campus. That's it.
That said, do you think that maybe they've learned from what the encampment looked like a few weeks ago? That, I mean, that obviously then, I guess how that was handled, you had two different sides clashing against each other. That encampment was blocking access to some of the area.
Right. So I think it's important to kind of correct the narrative. When that mob attacked our students, that was not two sides fighting each other. That encampment had been there. It was secure. The students were inside the encampment, and that's when the violent mob came and attacked them. Our students were defending themselves, and I think the New York Times has a wonderful minute by minute of what happened there and has shown clearly that the mob was the aggressors on our students, and campus security and police didn't do anything to actually protect them, which is ironic because they keep saying that the police are here to protect people. And quite honestly, I don't feel safe when the police are here. Police shouldn't be on college campuses the way that now UCLA is kind of, you know, cops are just roaming.
Yeah, no violence is ever okay, and obviously, and that reached a boiling point that people were hurt, and and I guess the chancellor, I mean Gene Block, he's in Washington D.C. being questioned by that House committee, and then just Wednesday, the police chief was removed,
reassigned, yes,
reassigned, I should say, reassigned. So they have taken action and seen, I guess, the consequences of fallout from what took place. That delayed response, they say, happened during that encampment.
Right, and I think that's actually quite smart of them. Nobody wants a reenactment of what happened. Nobody wants our students to be arrested. And quite honestly, when the cops have been giving dispersal orders,
they listen.
We've listened.
They see what they should do and continue to do to be allowed to protest.
Well, I think it's also that, you know, they're students, they're teenagers. They don't want to be arrested, right? I can imagine that. I wouldn't want to be arrested. My son is going to college next year, and I don't want him to be arrested for doing peaceful protests. So I think it's also smart on the part of the students to say, if you guys are going to be the aggressors, we're going to find a different way. And I think that's what they've been doing. That's why this has been moving. They're going to find a different way.
I have not heard of any arrests or any incidents.
No, I haven't seen any arrests. There was some police aggression over at the encampment when the students tried to give the food. So there was, as they were trying to push them back, there are some videos out there that show the police getting aggressive with people who are kind of on that front line. But no arrests, and I think that's a positive thing. And it's great that LAPD is not here anymore. LAPD doesn't belong on our campus. We have a police force.
Yeah, who are here. And I have seen some of those officers blocking some of the streets and the roads. And are you planning to be part of the strike next Tuesday?
So the strike is not a faculty strike, right? It is a graduate student researchers, yes, that union. What many faculty have pledged to do is to not pick up stricken work. So meaning that all the work that they are responsible for doing for the university, faculty have said we're not going to do it because that would undermine their strike.
That's the message.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Clark, so much. Yeah. Be safe.
I will.
Okay. And planning to be out here forever? How long?
We'll see. I mean, at some point I have my own children at home that I have to attend to, but yeah, I'll probably be out here for a while to make sure. I think it's really important that faculty are here because it's a shared governance on this campus, and there should be faculty who are involved in all of these discussions and decisions.
And a lot of students have been talking to you, I've seen, so thank you so much.
Of course, thank
you. Yeah, and then seeing that support from faculty and the signs and the message that they have standing shoulder to shoulder with these students, Mark and Rachel.
Yeah, Jasmine, hi, it's Mike at the desk. You know, as we're sitting there listening to her, I want to make it clear, we don't know yet, right, that there has been any kind of dispersal order or an unlawful assembly order given at this point, nothing that you've heard, right?
Well, I guess I just spoke to Barry, my other photographer, who was here this morning at around 7 when those protesters first set up that, I guess, the mini gathering or encampment, if you want to call it that, on the Kirchhoff Quad area. But he did say that the LAPD showed up, and around 12:30 they did declare over the loudspeaker unlawful assembly, and that's when the group said, okay, well, then we're out of here. And they marched over to Murphy and Dodd Hall, and that's where they gathered. So there was that push from the LAPD and the UCLA police to go ahead and tell them, yeah, you can't bring in the food and supplies, as you just heard from the professor there. That's when that kind of some tense moments happened, but then they did break it up and they walked over here. So there was the call from police to saying, hey, this is unlawful assembly, you got to go.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, I wonder if they now have, legally, if they now have to come back to this location, you know, and do it again now that they've kind of moved. And now we don't see any law enforcement in this area at all. But I just really quickly want to go up to Desmond Shaw and SKYCal. Des, you've been watching even more law enforcement kind of pour onto the campus. And I know that they moved from where Jasmine is, right in front of Dodd Hall. Is there a command post area kind of that they're all kind of gathering at right now?
Not that I can see. I mean, if anything,
those guys look like
looks like
leaving.
They're all leaving. All of those. Yeah, it looks like they're leaving. They're out on Hillgard Avenue right now, headed down towards Wilshire Boulevard, and the police helicopter just told us that they're leaving as well.
Wow.
So, like you said, if they may have to kind of go through that bureaucratic process again, because now they're in a different building, and if it's got to be UCPD that has to issue that, or what the deal is here. But, you know, we saw all those officers who were out here in riot gear just maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago, and then they got in their cars, and I was thinking maybe they're just repositioning their cars because they had it right in front of Dodd Hall,
right.
And you know they probably didn't want to be that close to all of the protesters. So I thought they were, you know, repositioning, but now it looks like they've left the campus completely. And again, the helicopter left as well. So just like that, LAPD's presence on the campus of UCLA has vanished. And so what is the next step? I think they might be hitting the reset button on this, or if you know, UC is making some other kind of calculated kind of approach to this. If they don't want a repeat of what happened a couple of weeks ago, it's hard to say. It's such a delicate situation, and you know, obviously very difficult decisions that they have to make about how they want to address this. And at least for now, LAPD, they have left UCLA.
Yeah, and Des, those Santa Monica officers that we saw pull up, it doesn't look like they're there anymore either. You're not seeing them anywhere?
No, I mean, I widened out and was looking everywhere just to see if I could see any law enforcement at all. And my pilot Dylan looking out the window as well, just kind of scouring the campus. We do not see any black and whites all of a sudden here. So a very quick change. On the campus. Yeah,
if I can bring Jasmine back in. Jazz, you know, we're just talking to Des. It looks like all the law enforcement has totally moved out, and you know, there's no violence here, none that we've seen, right, since this morning with that scuffle between the protesters and law enforcement and security. But maybe UCLA is, as Des mentioned, making kind of a calculated decision here to just let everybody kind of do their thing, and as that professor mentioned, express their, you know, their right to protest.
Yeah, that's right. And this is the only group of officers that I'm seeing right now in the lawn area, right across from Dodd Hall and near Royce Quad. You see the public safety aides that are on their bikes, but every other officer, well, that was here in the LAPD squad cars, they have left. I'm not sure if the street is open, although I do see a bus dropping some people off. So maybe they've even opened up some of the street here on Charles Young Drive. So yeah, but they're still in front. I mean, this crowd, they're still in front of Dodd Hall. But yeah, the officers have pretty much let them do what they're doing. Continuing, I thought they were going to move in because at one point they were in their riot gear and some of the helmets. Across the street here from Dodd Hall, or on the sidewalk here, it looked like they were ready to I guess, take any kind of action since they were going inside the hall and trying to disrupt some of the lectures, but that hasn't happened. And we were speaking to some of the faculty who say that essentially these pro-Palestinian demonstrators, they learned what they should not do, I guess, from a few weeks ago from that encampment. They don't want to be arrested. They want to get their message out to administrators. They want to be here to be able to protest and do it, again, like she said, without being arrested, without being stopped. And so that came from, she's a law professor here, Miss Clark. And so, yeah, we just spoke to her. And again, she said she wants to be out here, support her students. She doesn't know how long they will be out here, but they started at 7 this morning. Yeah. In the Kirchhoff Quad area, where they then were told to move, and that's when they, by police, and that's when they marched over here to Murphy and Dodd Hall.
And now, Jasmine, with this campus, it'll be interesting to see, kind of later tonight. Last time we had this, the campus technically closes, I think it's from like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or midnight to 6 a.m., something around that time frame, where only, students and faculty are allowed on the campus. And last time, that's how they ended up arresting something like 46 people. So I wonder if we're going to be in a situation where they're going to have to wait for the campus to close, essentially, to try to move the people that are not affiliated with the campus off, which kind of brings me to my next question. Have you seen or spoken to people that have really nothing to do with UCLA but are here? We saw that at UC Irvine, where one guy didn't even really know what the students wanted, just wanted to join them in their fight. Have you seen any of that go on?
Well, I haven't, but it's hard to tell, right? Because some of the people I've spoken to have refused to talk to the media. They've held signs up in our face. They've blocked any kind of view that we were trying to get, and they've essentially put their finger over their mouth saying, shh, we need to be quiet. They did not want to talk to the media. So I couldn't get a sense of if they were students, if they were faculty here. They were deferring everything to the head organizer, who I could not track down. I guess she'd been on the loudspeaker moving around. But those I did speak to were the faculty members, 2 math adjunct professors, that law professor I mentioned, Miss Clark, and then also a younger man who said he is a sophomore here. He said he is a sophomore at UCLA. This is the first protest that he has joined. He was not part of the encampment a few weeks ago, but he was going to make his way through Dodd Hall and kind of march through the hallways. So he says he is a student. So as far as I could tell, everyone I've kind of just nodding their head saying, yeah, I'm a student, whether they are or not, it's kind of hard to tell. Yeah. But they're not being told to leave. So I guess it's going to, like you said, the curfew, or when the campus is closed, will police then kind of sweep in, if they're even still here at this point. No one will give me a timetable either of what they plan to do next, and maybe they just don't know. Yeah, and that's kind of segues my next question, Jazz. I was going to ask, last time when we had the encampment, it was very, very organized. They had media representatives. They had, designated people and places for, press to come and talk to. It seemed very coordinated and organized. Are you getting that same sense that this is as coordinated and organized as it was a couple of weeks ago? In a sense, I guess, but no, it seems a little, I guess, more disjointed, because there were some groups that stayed at Murphy Hall for a while, and then kind of joined up with this group in front of Dodd Hall. Some of the folks I've been talking to, one is with the union, some are with sorry, and I'm forgetting the union name, the UFA, or anyway, the ones that are supposed to be striking next week. So some are with the faculty union, others are with just students who have come out. So it doesn't really seem like there is a clear-cut head organizer of this. It was kind of just spread through social media. Right. And so at this point, they, let me get the name of that union. I know it's escaping me. It's the UAW 4811. Yeah, UAW 4811. That will be striking next week, and they actually have a pretty big presence out here right now, Mike. Yeah. Thank you, Jasmine. All right, Jasmine Veal live at the UCLA campus. Thank you, Jazz. We've got Desmond Shaw live overhead in SKYCal. We're going to continue to monitor this situation. We'll be back, of course, coming up in just about an hour for KCAL News at 4, also streaming right here on CBS News Los Angeles. We'll monitor the situation here, and if anything else warrants, we'll be sure to jump back on and let you know about it. But at this point, LAPD, Santa Monica Police, all of the law enforcement agencies have seemingly pulled off of the UCLA campus, rather, as those protesters kind of go inside and around Dodd Hall. Again, we'll be back on if something warrants. If not, we'll see you in about an hour on CBS News Los Angeles. For all of us here at KCAL News, I'm Mike Rogers. We'll see you at 4 o'clock.
The mayor of Louisville has released video of the arrest of pro golfer Scottie Scheffler last week. He was making his way to the Valhalla Golf Club. Scheffler was on his way to play in the second round of the PGA Championship when he was arrested for allegedly injuring a police officer who had been directing traffic at the scene of a crash. But the officer's body cam video was not turned on, so the incident itself was not recorded. The officer has been disciplined for violating policy in not having his camera on. Scheffler's attorney spoke to reporters earlier today after the videos were released.
Everything that is out there supports what Scottie Scheffler said from the start, that this was a chaotic scene and a miscommunication, and he didn't do anything wrong.
The attorney says they aren't interested in settling the case, and they'll be looking for a dismissal or a trial. Scheffler is scheduled to be arraigned on June 3rd. Cassie Ventura has broken her silence since a video was released showing her then-boyfriend, hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs, attacking her. In a message posted on Instagram, Ventura said the support means everything to her. She stressed the importance of believing victims the first time and offered her support to other victims of domestic violence.